Hello class, so this is exercise 1M, problem number 1. This is under the section of population growth right here, okay? So this is a very short section and it's basically how we can use sequences, whether arithmetic or geometric, in order to model some growth. You know, it doesn't have to be population, it can be the growth of anything, can be modeled after these two mathematical ideas of sequences and series, and I will give you one of those examples in here. This section of exercises consists of just three problems, 1, 2, and 3. We do the first one, which is very similar to the third one, and you're gonna do number 2 and number 3 on your own. So let's get started. So what are we having here? We have the following: a high white blood cell count. A high white blood cell count can indicate that the patient is fighting an infection. A doctor is monitoring the number of white blood cells in one of her patients after receiving antibiotics. The lab returns the following data: hour 0, 12, 24, 36, and this is the white blood cells count accordingly. And we're asked these three questions. Okay, so the first question says the following: create a general formula to model the patient's white blood cell count at any given time. Okay then, so we have to analyze this table. I'm gonna copy this table very quickly in here, guys. In here we have a variable h for hour. I'm gonna just write h. And then we have 0 hours, 12 hours, 24, and 36. And in this other row, we will have the white blood cells count. I'm just gonna write C for convenience purposes. So at hour 0, we have this many cells. At hour 12, we have 11,000. And then this many. And then this many. Okay, let me draw kind of like a table. Okay, there you go. So let's see, guys, let's analyze this information. So first of all, this thing, guys, the count, which is this, it forms this sequence, as you can see. Let's see what type of sequence is this. Could it be arithmetic? Could it be geometric? Or neither? You know, like neither of these two, and maybe some other more complicated thing. Let's see. So is it arithmetic? Let's make the hypothesis that it's arithmetic. Then the difference between any pair of consecutive terms should stay put. It should be fixed. The difference between these two is 500, and it's clear that the difference between these two is not 500. Therefore, the hypothesis is rejected. It's not arithmetic. Now let's make the hypothesis that this sequence is geometric. And please take 1 minute or 2 minutes. I'm gonna pause. I want you to pause this video and then check that this is in fact a geometric sequence, right? Basically divide this term over this one to get the ratio between these two, and that ratio, which is gonna be 0.88, will be the same ratio between this pair and this other pair. So all of the consecutive pairs should have this ratio in order to classify this as a geometric sequence. So is it geometric? Yes, because we tested it and it came out geometric. Okay, so this is a geometric sequence. So if we label this as U1, U2, U3, and U4, then we should realize that the first term is 12,500, and the ratio is, like we already established, 0.88. And therefore we can write the formula for the nth term, right? Which is the following: the first term times the ratio to the n minus 1. Perfect. So this is the general formula. Let me write it here. General formula for the nth term. All right. Now, is this the answer? Is this the answer to letter A? Not exactly, guys. Not exactly, because in here you should realize that what they're asking you is a formula to model the patient's white blood cell count at any given time. Okay, so basically what you should have is a formula in which you can input the number of hours, and outputs the count. You see what I mean? This is okay if you consider just this sequence, and if you consider that it is this index in here, this index that is changing, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and with the changing of this index, the the count is changing, right? When this is 1, you have this count. When this variable is 2, when the n is 2, you have this count. When the n is 3, you have this count, and so on. So you don't want that. You don't want that. You want a formula that works with h and not with n. So how do we accommodate for that change? What you should do is the following, guys. Look, this is the general, kind of like the general process for making these types of changes. Okay, so in here, I'm gonna run in here, guys, the variable n, which is the variable that specifies the position of each of these terms. Basically, n is 1. N equals 1 tells you the position of this first term. N equals 2 is the position, as you can see, of this term, and so on. So in here, n is 3 and n is 4, right? So when n equals 1, you get this, n equals 2, you get this, and etc. Okay, so how do we transform this formula that is written in terms of n? How do I write it in terms of h, of the hours? What we do is this. You have to look for a connection. I'm going to write it here. What is the connection between this variable n and your variable h? Connection between n and like, can we discover a formula that connects these two variables, h and n? For a respective value of 1 to n, you get a respective value of 0 in h. For n equals 2, you get h equals 12, and so on. So once again, I want you to pause the video for a couple of minutes and try to write an equation that connects or links the variables n and h. What should that equation be? Pause the video, do it. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you already spent some time trying to figure out what equation is the one that links variable n and variable h. And if you discover this one, that h is 12 times n minus 1, then you're correct. This is the equation that links those two variables. You can give some numbers to n, these numbers, and you can check that you get the respective value of h. Okay, so basically, guys, it is this thing, this linking equation, that will help you transform this formula that is written in terms of n into a formula containing h. So here we go. I'm gonna do it here. I'm gonna write the count written in terms of h is the same as this formula, but with a respective change in here. Instead of this, instead of being written with in terms of n, I'm gonna use this to replace this thing in this way. Look, if I divide both sides over 12, I get this. which is equal to n minus 1. And if you can see, this is the same thing that you have in here, right? So instead of n minus 1, I can put h over 12, h over 12, and you get the corresponding formula, but written no longer in terms of n, but in terms of h. In terms of h, the cell count written in terms of h. What that means is you're going to put in any hour that you want in here, and this expression will tell you the cell count at that precise hour. For example, put h equals 0 in here, and you're going to get this value. Put h equals 12, which is this, and you're going to be getting this much, and so on, right? So basically, these two things, guys, these two things are the same. One is written in terms of n, in terms of this variable n. This other one is written in terms of this variable h, which is the hours, and that's what you're being asked. So that's how you do this change. Okay, letter B. Use the general formula to calculate the number of white blood cells this patient will have after 3 days. Okay, so now that you have this formula that works with hours, all you have to do is get the number of hours that there are in 3 days, which is 72, clearly, and then letter B, then just calculate the cell count for 72 hours. So it's going to be this much. You just make that substitution, 72 over 12, calculate this expression, and you're going to get the result. Pretty simple. Once you have this formula, it's pretty simple to solve letter B. And what about letter C? Discuss the limitations of your general formula. Okay, as you can see, guys, as the hours go by, 0, 12, 24, 36, as the time goes by, the cell count is getting progressively lower and lower and lower. So at some point, the cell count will be very close to 0, and that's one of the limitations of this formula. Okay, that I mean, what we are doing is modeling the cell count, but only, realistically speaking, only under some range of hours. Okay, we don't know what range because we're not biologists, and that's not the point of this problem. Is not teach you all the details about uh, cell count and so on, but there should be a point. There should be an hour. We don't know what it is at which beyond this hour the formula stops to work. Okay, why? Because the cell count will be very 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 small, which is perhaps not even realistically for a person, right? Maybe in that case the person probably is going to be dead by then, or I don't know, we don't know, right? So this formula and any formula in mathematics that is, let's say, obtained through some real observations is only applicable under some limits. Okay, under some limits. So that's in generally speaking, that's what this letter C means. Okay, the limitations are that the formula should be applicable only under certain range of hours, and no more beyond that. What hour, we don't know the details of the biology, but we are sure that there should be 1 hour after which this formula is no longer useful or applicable, basically. So that's it. That solves the problem number 1. Problem number 3 is very similar to problem number 1, and problem 2 is maybe not that similar, but it's also manageable. So get to do number 2 and 3 for tomorrow, and that's it.